Hey there friends, Dave Paulides, CanAm Missing Project, copyrighted edition for our video channel. And we're in here with Huck, our executive producer, who's checking on our progress today. And she's in a good mood. Can you shake? Can you shake? Oh, that's a good girl. Yeah. She's been running around outside with me and enjoying the good Montana weather, and we just had a little respite because it's been raining most of the day, so I let her get outside a little bit to run around. He's a good girl. He's a good girl. Yeah. Yeah. Huh? Yeah, he's a good girl. And she actually has been a really good girl. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Good girl. Yes, sir. Yeah. So, anyhow, we're going to get right up to our missing person segment. Let Huck get back to her work, which is patrolling the neighborhood. That's kind of what Pyrenees do. They roll around, checking in on everybody, and it's kind of a cool thing. Everyone in the neighborhood knows Huck, knows she's happy, and knows she's on patrol. So anyhow, in our missing person segment today, I've got two cases that are going to baffle your mind. And before I get going onto that, let me say that some things have been happening in my world that haven't been too fun. And talk about my movie, Missing 411, The UFO Connection. Somebody in Vietnam decided that they were going to upload the movie. And they did so well on that, they decided to upload a second one of my movies. And apparently this person didn't quite understand the way YouTube works. They said they had a right to put up the movie, which caused my distribution company's vice president to get involved and state, no, this person has no right to the movie. And they forced a takedown with YouTube. And the person got 2 strikes. This person has over 400,000 viewers. To get 2 strikes, that means he owns one more, and he loses his whole channel, which is huge. And he appealed, he lost. And then I had a long discussion with our VP, and he said, Dave, you'd be surprised how many idiots are out there that think that they can bully their way around. And he says this actually happens more than most people understand. And the people that do this don't understand that there are consequences to this behavior. And the consequences now for this individual is losing all of his subscribers. Now, I got a lot of notes saying, oh, Dave, you know, I watched your video and it was real good, and your documentary rather, and it was really good, blah, blah, blah. Well, you know, I got to tell you that one was made when Ben took his life. This one. So it has a lot of heart and soul in it from both of us. And to hear that people are happy about victimizing me, and then I saw a bunch of comments and I got a bunch of emails saying, hey, if it's on the internet, it's free. That isn't how society works. That isn't how our world can work. Our world only works if we have respect for each other and respect for work. When somebody's writing this, I can imagine that they're on their computer. And what if I just walked in and took the computer and said, no, you don't need that anymore. I'm bigger, I'm stronger than you. I'm taking that. person probably wouldn't like that. I don't understand the logic. I don't really want to get into it. But suffice it to say, it's a history lesson. I'm sure that there's going to be somebody else that's going to... There have been other people that have done this, but the takedowns have been much easier because they've been in North America, the people doing it. When you get into other countries, it takes subsidiaries of YouTube to get involved, and it just takes a couple days more. Eventually it happens. Now, a couple days ago, or a couple of videos ago, I read an article, and it was on a news broadcast I made. And I know a lot of you don't watch the news broadcast, and I can tell by the numbers. I get about 1/3 the viewership on news as I get on a missing persons segment. Unfortunately, you missed some really good news. Now I'm going to read this to you again, and if you've heard it, then please can allow this to play. But for you that haven't heard it, I'm going to be truthful. I think this is one of the most important articles I've ever read on my channel. Pay attention. Now this was on a site called How and Why, and it was posted on March 9th of 2023. How and Why. Headlines: ex-CIA officer, truth about UFOs is terrifying and interdimensional beings are within us. The U.S. Congress now suggests that some UFOs are non-human in origin. This is the most significant assertion made in ufology to date. Several insiders have openly acknowledged the existence of UFOs over the past few decades and implied the phenomena is always present around us and that our limited senses prevent us from being able to see it. Stop there. I've talked to you before about a group of people standing and watching. And one person in the group sees a UFO 100 feet away and is dumbfounded that nobody else can see it. Now, is that controlled observation? Are they controlling what we see as a group? On with the article. A few months ago, former CIA officer Jim Semivan, S-E-M-I-V-A-N, made a shocking statement saying, quote, "There's a whole other reality that surrounds us that we just simply don't have the ability to see or interact with," end of quotes. He worked with the CIA for 25 years before joining Tom DeLonge's To the Stars Academy with other ex-government insiders. To the Stars Academy is an organization that claims to have been responsible for the release of the now famous Pentagon UFO videos. He described how he joined the CIA and acquired years of specialized training in spycraft. Since the CIA operated under the need-to-know premise, Semivan was not specifically informed of the UFO-related study, despite the fact CIA analyst Kit Green was well known for exploring the paranormal. According to him, quote, "There is a force out there that can control our environment, that can put thoughts into your head." In fact, Semivan has previously stated that UFOs sighted by the Navy are from another world. He made shocking assertions regarding unidentified flying objects in an interview with James Landoli, saying that the occurrence can be startling, especially to children. Quote, "When we started TTSA, we had discussions about this all the time. Are we sure we want to disclose this information? Are we going to scare 8-year-olds? End of quotes. Quote, "I had some friends who were like, oh, my daughter wants to know all about UFOs. Can we talk to her about that? And I said, no, I'm not going to talk to you about that. What I am going to tell her or him, these 10 or 11-year-olds, could such a reality kill them psychologically for the rest of their lives?" Wow. Yes, that there is a force out there that can control our environment, put thoughts into our heads, that they can lie to you, deceive you, and they are not in control of your life. And that you are not in control of your life. Tell this to a 12-year-old. While succinct, Semivan suggests that the rabbit hole goes much deeper when it comes to the UFO phenomena. Moreover, in this podcast appearance on Calling All Beings, he fiercely said that non-human intelligence is living with humans on Earth. Quote, "There's an entity out there. There's some kind of non-human intelligence that's living with us on this effing planet," Semivan said. He He spoke about his own experiences with alien-like beings that started happening to him and his wife in the bedroom in 1990 on Coast to Coast AM. He insisted that the event was real and that it was not a hypnagogic dream state. The couple thereafter had intermittent poltergeist activity in their home, and more recently claimed to have seen a hooded figure that resembled Death Eater from the Harry Potter series, who perhaps materialized into the death of a close friend. Sullivan said he agreed with the statement made by Colm Kelleher, a researcher at Skinwalker Ranch, that the UFO phenomena is much more than just mechanical parts and devices, because psychic and biological factors also contribute to the event's extreme strangeness. He stated that To the Stars was still looking into the metamaterials with unusual isotope ratios that may be connected to the UFOs. Think about this and listen carefully. There is a force out there that can control our environment and put thoughts into our heads. They can lie to you, deceive you, and that you are not in control of your life. Holy cow. So a lot of people believe that we're in a simulation, that some third party is controlling everything around us and watching us to see how we react to different environments, different things, different obstacles placed in front of us. And based on our chemical makeup, they see how we, in that chemical makeup, not the personality, the chemical makeup reacts to danger, stress, depression, etc. It's like something is studying us. And no doubt they look at us like a chemical composition, because we're all different under that DNA profile. And that chemical composition may be graded or looked at as DNA. In the first half of the interview, Sullivan said, "I think they mentioned that the phenomena is a natural part of the universe and we're living in it, but we don't recognize it. It's like a simulation. The same way that insects and animals don't recognize the human universe. A cat and a dog could be running through a library, but they don't have the faintest idea what the books are all about and what the libraries are all about. We might be walking through our existence, and there's a whole other reality that surrounds us that we just simply don't have the ability to see or interact with." I think that comparison is really enlightening. I'm thinking about Huck. Huck's in here. She doesn't know that I'm talking to tens of thousands of people, and that this could be viewed all around the world. And it is. Huck doesn't understand that. Huck just thinks, hey, there's Dad. He gives me belly rubs all the time, he scratches my neck, and he feeds me good food a couple times a day. And I'm happy. And then we run around and play at the reservoir in the water. But that's Huck's life. She doesn't understand that we're trying to understand the idiosyncrasies of the universe. Onward, quote, "It seems to be peeking inside of our little consensus reality. As I explained to somebody once, it comes close, it teases us, it cajoles us, it lies to us. But you can never take it home to meet the parents. It won't allow you to do that. There's no formal introduction. And on top of that, there's no ontology, which is just a fancy word. It basically means there's no structure to even discuss this. We don't have a common lexicon. Somebody said we have dots, but no connections. I don't even think we have dots," end of quote. In an interview on Whitley Strieber, Sullivan says he refers to the UFO, UAP, and alien phenomena as jinn. He does not mean that in a religious way, credibility to the interdimensional hypothesis. Quote, "This phenomena does lie to you, and it is very, very deceitful at times. It would tell you things that sound wonderful, but also make no sense. And is it toying with us, or is it using some kind of, symbols that we don't understand? I refer to them as jinn because, in Arab culture, they're sort of like us, but they're made out of, quote, unquote, fire or ether or whatever. But they also have the same kind of emotions. But there's good jinn and there's bad jinn." Now, Many of you would say, well, Dave, that was a heavy article. It wasn't a letter, it was an article. It was heavy. But just like he stated, we aren't in control of our universe, our world. They can do things that affect our emotions. I think of that since the first day I read this article about a week ago. I thought of this continuously. What about all the people that are homeless on the streets, that are addicted to drugs? Are they just the ones that have been picked out by this entity to suffer those consequences, and they're studying them to see how far down the rabbit hole they'll go? Am I a fortunate one that wasn't chosen for that? I don't know. I would think that this would not be a good thing for young kids to hear. And I would think that it's only a theory. But I brought this up because of Skinwalker Ranch. There are so many things going on there at the same time that it's hard to understand what's the overwhelming controlling force. And if this is true, then I doubt that that entity wants to communicate with us. Because if they're studying us, if they're trying to control us, they definitely don't want us to understand them. The reason I say it's one of the most important articles I've ever read to you is because in a strange way, I think it definitely might be true. And we use medical illness, mental health issues like schizophrenia, bipolar, to explain certain things that happen to our mind. But what if it's all just an implanted source prior to birth based on that DNA sequence? Or if it's something that they could just zap into your brain as you're living to control you. Very scary. Next letter. First letter. Hey Dave, I know I just wrote to you about an odd UFO entity, but we have been seeing, and I try not to bother you too often, but I felt compelled to share this with you since you're a voice on suicide and mental health. I've not heard it often addressed in multiple public forums, the mental health of young children. We can all find hundreds of suicides among our youth due to bullying, whether cyber or in person. Most are teenage victims. I'd like to share something that is weighing heavy on my heart, and I have no idea how to navigate this. My 6-year-old granddaughter, yes, 6, told her mom that the world would be better off without her in it. 6 years old. We've noticed a change in her happy, talkative character recently. It's taken a while for her to finally confide in us that she's being bullied at school. A private Catholic school where we pay tuition to keep her out of the public school system. Our local school system, like many others, is destructive to the family unit, self-esteem, and brainwashing. Currently, our school district is being sued for allowing underage students to change their gender without having to notify their parents. The school is cutting out the parents. We thought the private school would be safer, but no. We still have our kind, loving granddaughter being crushed by other 6-year-old girls making fun of her, laughing at her, calling her names, leaving her sitting alone at lunch and recess, and now telling her the world would be better without her. Kids can be so cruel. Please, parents, teach your kids about being a bully. We all think of our children are perfect little people that would never hurt anyone. The truth is, they can be as vicious or more so than adults. If we call a meeting with the parents and the school, it'll become worse for her. If we pull her out, we teach her to run from the problem. What do? That's rhetorical unless we have some ideas. The only cure that I can see is for us all to not raise bullies. Set good examples. Know that your kids are not innocent. When I was a 911 dispatcher, I worked a suicide of an 8-year-old who hung himself. It never should have happened. He should have never felt that this was the only relief from that torture. Now I fear the same thing for my beloved granddaughter, the light of my life. Please, if you feel compelled, speak to the village about accountability of their children. We think we know everything about them. We don't. Be vigilant. Teach them that their actions may cause others to feel bad. I can remember talking to my kids about being a bully. And I said, that's the lowest form of life in school in my mind. And Ben, who wasn't the biggest kid, but he was big. I know a couple times he stood up for smaller kids and came back and told me, he said, Dad, there may be something being said at school or a call. This is what happened. This is why. I never got called. School didn't even care. Public school. I said, Ben, you keep doing that. You keep doing that. Anytime you can step up for the underprivileged, the smaller, you do it, because you know what? You would not want that to happen to you. Now, if it was my kids and they were in school, I would talk to the teacher and I would talk to the principal. And I would encourage them to bring an expert into class and talk about bullying. And if I knew the kids, I would definitely, this is just me, I would definitely sit down and ask for a session with those parents, just me and them. Because I can't understand how a parent could be defensive on this point. And you have to have good verbal skills. You have to be non-confrontational. Now, there are bad parents out there. There's no doubt. But by making this, you have to hope that the teacher, and there are good teachers, and the principal, and there are good principals, care. And if you put them on notice, my daughter is having these problems, and these people are essentially torturing her, we need to have it stop. I think I'd give it a go that way first, because ignoring it, walking away from it, doesn't do any good. And by confronting it, you're telling your daughter that you're in her corner, that you're going to fight for her, and we're not going to walk away from it. And as I've stated before in past videos, when I was in high school, I wasn't very big. I didn't start growing until I was about a junior. When I was a sophomore, there was a senior who was about a foot taller than me, and he picked on me incessantly. It was torture. And I went to the principal. He didn't do anything. Went to him twice, and I said, this guy's just bothering the heck out of me. And he was like, he was a bully, and he was nobody important in school. He's one of those people that always hung around the back gates, and bad things were associated with him. And one day, I told my dad, I said, I can't take it anymore. And he goes, well, then you pick your spot, and I'll back you up, and you just hit that kid as hard as you can right in the face and knock him down. And Dave, he'll leave you alone. It was all true. I did it. And I went to the principal's office. PE teacher said, Dave, you just knocked down one of the biggest kids in school. That was unbelievable. They thought I was a great guy. Come try for football. Come on. But I got to take you to the principal's office. And the principal, right away, he says, oh, I'm going to have to suspend you and this and that. And then my dad got there. He said, my son says you're going to suspend him? He goes, oh yeah, we have to. He incited violence. And my dad said, well, hold on a minute. I'm going to have my attorney call you, and we're going to sue you for inaction, because how many times has my son come to your office and asked for help? Well, twice, but we thought it'd be best to leave it alone. Well, you still think it was best to leave it alone? What did you expect my son to do? Make a long story short, that dean of students backed off 100%. And said, okay, just have him don't come to school tomorrow. We won't call it a suspension. Just keep him home. And then when he comes in the next day, come see me. So the next day, a couple days later, I come in and I see the dean. He says, Dave, I understand what you did, but it wasn't the right thing to do. I don't want you to do it again. But I talked to so-and-so, the kid you knocked down, and he said he won't ever talk to you again. I said, perfect. You know what? Oh, that kid never talked to me again. That was the end of the problem. And at the end of my sophomore year, my dad came in and said, I want to see my son's transcripts. He just wanted to see if there was anything on it. There was nothing. And years later, I was taking a polygraph for the police department, and they said, well, did you ever incite any violence against anyone? I said, yeah, I did. I said, I got to be honest. And I explained what I did. And the sergeant that was interviewing me goes, I understand that. And that will have no effect on us hiring you. So thanks. And I ended up getting hired. Sometimes you got to stand up. That day, when I knew what I was going to do, I've never been more scared in my life than I was up to that point in my life. Afterwards, I felt like I had a new life at that high school. So I'm not saying it's the right thing to do. I'm just saying that that's what I did. Next letter. Hey Dave, I had a couple of thoughts on the footwear elements of some segments you bring to us and the oddness about it. I was thinking maybe the whole mind control thing where people start to strip clothes and shoes, act out a character on the trail, is like something is entering their minds, like you mentioned in some segments. And is that the initiation of an abduction? Remember the article I read you at the beginning of this video where we talked about something controlling our thoughts. Mind control is only, say, 50% of the whole procedure, and this is to firstly silence the subject plus elevate GHB levels for docile control. And then the second part of the abduction, which is to remove the shoes so you can connect a full circuit to bring on the cloaking or the abduction scenario into play. Please bear with me. You mentioned that a Native American elder has spent 95% of his life barefoot. And you said it is so they can connect to the land and the land can connect with them. Picture this. Granite equals battery power, and water or dirt or snow equals wires, and humans equal light bulbs. Put those elements together and it makes the bulb light up in a completed circuit. Then the cloaking and or opening of the portal can be achieved to finally take a subject away. And as we know, no footprints, no scent trails, as people don't just walk off, you would find them. They must go straight up in the air somehow. Also, you mentioned that the dirtiest part of the body is the shoes. But when barefoot, you stood on dirt and germs, which is worse to the body as actually on your skin. The shoe is a protector of sorts. An even better analogy would be rubber is an insulator from the earth, as it breaks the wire part of the circuit, and the shoes need to come off to make the whole sequence of abduction work. All this may sound a bit wackadoodle, but I try to think outside the realms of being human, as parts what's going on here is not human. I think that makes a lot of sense. I don't know how it all fits, but it makes a lot of sense. Now, a lot of you get upset at me, yelling almost. Why do you read these stupid letters? Just do the missing persons cases. Do you really think that it was all a waste up to this point? Don't you think some value here? What I'm reading to you? Next one. Hey Dave, you brought back old memories talking about bees and honey. I did a special segment a few weeks ago about bees, and I talked about bees, yellow jackets, etc., and how to work your way around them when you're in the woods. Years ago, Y2K, I was living in east of Visalia, California, out in the orange and olive groves. Every season was so cool when the ranchers brought in the beehives. There were mornings where I could go for a short walk outside. The bees were outside doing their thing. Whenever a bee or bees would land on my arm and say hi, I was so honored. I love those little guys, and it seemed that they loved me too. Earlier in the 80s, I was living in Little Rock near Palmdale and working on the Rockwell B1B program. Bees and hummingbirds, but mostly hummers, peach orchards. I put out a hummingbird feeder, big mistake, hummingbirds everywhere, and they were so aggressive. Little savages. I moved to Kentucky in 2007 out past Reedland, not far from Paducah. Deer everywhere. Wow, so nice. After living in traffic-laden California, I sure don't miss the California Department of Motor Vehicles. What a nightmare that was. Kentucky is civilization my way. Thanks. Next one. You touched on a question as to why we don't see beings come through a portal into our dimension. What I said about that is that if a portal was completely random, then we'd be walking down a sidewalk in a major city and you would see something open up, someone would disappear, and they'd be gone. We don't see that. It is not random. In the Bible, there's a spirit world that overlaps ours, which we cannot see unless God lifts the veil from our eyes to make that which is invisible to visible. Or when angelic beings of light who have the ability to manifest themselves into visible human-looking beings that can eat, drink, and be touched for a short period of time. So in my opinion, the beings are coming through portals, but we just can't see them unless they have the power to manifest themselves or God chooses us to see them. Just some thoughts. Love your show, love your honesty and integrity. You remind me of my late dad, as you're so incredibly humble and down to earth. Never change. Well, I'm humbled that you said that. Thank you. Next one. Spotted this alarming news report about 6 gallons of GHB that was intercepted, and knowing about your concerns about several missing 411 cases in GHB, I thought this short bit might interest you. It makes me wonder how much of the GHB stuff gets here. I had only thought about veterinarians got it. In past 411 videos, you've talked about our body's natural GHB production, which is true. I've always wondered if natural GHB production is the underlying mechanism to hypnosis. To me, they sound familiar. Also, we see certain animals like snakes that appear to be able to hypnotize and freeze their prey. So perhaps this natural GHB mechanism is in all mammals. I'm not qualified to test that hypnosis, but perhaps you know a doctor that uses hypnosis that can test to see if that's the mechanism by making the GHB blood test from a subject that is in deep hypnotic state. It'd also be interesting to describe the factual details of the most common UFO abduction encounters to a hypnotist and see and ask them if those details are similar to what they would use to induce a hypnotic trance. We know hypnosis works. My understanding is we don't understand the underlying details, so perhaps natural GHB production is the mechanism for hypnosis. Perhaps long ago there was a method our ancestors used that made them more successful hunters, being able to remain completely aware while remaining perfectly still while hunting. I watched a karate master place himself in a hypnotic trance, then stand barefoot atop 4 razor-sharp samurai swords while completely piercing his arms at the elbows with bicycle spokes, to which he then hung 2 buckets filled with water from those bicycles spoked. As incredible as his feat was, the most amazing part was that he could also consciously control which arm would bleed a drop of blood and then stop that arm bleeding, and which switch the blood drops to the other arm all at will, all while he was in a self-induced hypnotic trance. This was at Madison Square Garden at the Worldwide Karate Championships in front of hundreds of witnesses. During the late 70s, I had volunteered and actually touched those swords and watched this incredible blood control from a couple feet away. It was all legit. So hypnosis can be a very powerful survival mechanism. It'd be worth testing to see if our body's own GHB level was at the heart of the hypnosis issue. I told the story once, but it's worth telling again. When I was at the police department, my best friend got killed, Gordon Silva. I spoke at the funeral, and I was the department attaché that was sent to Hawaii to be the representative at his funeral there. And his cousins worked at Halawa State Prison, the worst of the worst in Hawaii. So they were at the airport, they met me, gave me big hugs. I never met them before. And they said, Dave, we understand you're here for 6 days. I go, that's right. And he goes, the family said it's okay if we take you tomorrow. And because you're in law enforcement, we can kind of hang out, get to know each other. And I've got the okay from my warden to bring you to Halawa. I go, wow, I've never been to inside a state prison. I'd like to go, thank you. So we ended up going. And this cousin said, Gordon has a distant relative. It's not a real close relative that's in Supermax. And he killed a drug dealer in Hawaii. And Dave, he killed the guy because the guy was selling drugs to his children. And he told the guy, stop selling drugs to my kids or I will kill you. And he killed the man with his bare hands. And he was serving like 30 to life or something. And he said, Dave, we want you to meet this man. He's a good person. I said, sure. If you're saying he's good, let's go. So we went to the prison. They turned me all around, and went into Supermax. And I met this man. He was about 5'4", very small, but very ripped. I mean, there wasn't an ounce of fat on him. I don't remember his name. I wish I did. But we conversed a long time. I mean, he said, you know, he's talking to me. You're doing God's work, Mr. Paulides. And thank you for being here. And Gordon was a good man. I remember him when I was a child. And we always had fun together. And we talked. And then one of the cousins looked at this man and said, hey, would you do that for Dave? I didn't even know what they meant. He goes, of course. So one of the cousins pulls out a quarter. And this small 5'4" man takes the quarter. He starts rubbing it. Rubs it. Just rubbing it like this and holds it just like this. And he has it like right here. He's rubbing. And then he starts shaking. And I kid you not, that all of this area of his body went very thin. You could see it happening. And his forearms and his hands got huge. It's like I couldn't believe what I was watching. And he was shaking. And he took the quarter and tore it in half so that it was just barely hung together, but it was torn in half. And then he almost collapsed and the cousins caught him. And I said, my gosh, that's the most unbelievable thing I've seen in person. And then he went on to explain that when he was a young man, he went to Japan and he studied with experts in different types of martial arts and body control and mind control. And he said that he learned how to control the blood flow, just like that article said, the blood flow in his body, so that they would go to needed areas when he had to have it. I gotta say that I never forgot that. And I asked him, I said, what can I do for you? He says, nothing. He goes, it's a blessing to have you and the cousins here. It makes for a real enjoyable part of my day, because mostly I'm alone, and just to talk to people. I felt so bad for that guy. And I knew what the cousins told me about him killing the drug dealer was 100% true. Unbelievable. That's all I could say. Oh, I know what I was going to tell you. So, just in the last couple weeks, I always talk to people about health. And what's the latest thing that's good for you, bad for you? So I stopped drinking stevia, and I started drinking this drink called Hint. I'm not paid anything for this. I'm not given these for free. I buy them. Now, Hint, it says water infused with cherry essence. They have cherry, lemon, lime, all these different flavors. Now, what it says is it's 0 calories. It's water infused with cherry essence and other natural flavors. No sweetener. No calories. And the best I can tell you is it tastes like water with just a hint of cherry in it. It's really good. I've tried the lemon. It's the best, I think. And I've tried cherry. Lime is good. And I've been trying to drink more of those just because it's a little more interesting than water. And it's not that expensive. So, and it's non-carbonated. So for what that's worth, I try to tell you guys all the latest and greatest. Now, I'm going to talk to you about 2 cases today. First case, some of you may know this case, but there's a reason. Hold on. And if you know the case, be patient, because there's going to be a revelation here. First incident happened in Schleierville, New York. Man's name was Fritz Drum, 68 years old. Went missing November 24th, 2015. He lived on Burgoyne Road on 170 acres on a family farm. So this is Schleierville, New York. This is Fish Creek. This was the family farm right here. This is the Hudson River, Fish Creek. So his property was almost surrounded by water. Important point, folks. Important point. So this is Fritz. Fritz was somebody that everybody liked. Got along with almost everybody. Not only did he take care of the family farm, but he also took care of a property across the road from him. He was a caretaker. And he did 16 years on the town council in Schleierville. He kept getting reelected. Well, he was last seen at 10 a.m. on November 24th, 2015 by his wife. And his wife said goodbye to him because she was going to a family get-together that Fritz didn't want to go to. So Ruth, his wife, said, hey, I'll see you later today, drove off, and Fritz was on the property. Thought was that he was probably going to walk through the property like he did all the time, or he was going to go hunting on the property, which he did all the time. So the best thought was he went hunting. Now Ruth came home that night, and Fritz's truck was there. Everything belonging to Fritz was there, but Fritz. So she went out onto the property, called his name, yelled for him. They were the only two who lived in the property. She was worried, deeply worried. But she thought, because she had watched TV, that you had to wait 24 hours to report somebody as missing, so she didn't report him right when she came home. The next day, Ruth called the Saratoga County Sheriff. Now, they had a small farm. They had a decent creek, fish creek, that surrounded the property. One of the things Fritz loved was just walking the property, working the farm. Well, the Saratoga County Sheriff brought in 150 searchers. And Schleierville told them that, yeah, he's a straight up guy. He never was involved in anything wrong. People loved him. He would never leave his wife. He was loved by everyone. 150 searchers walked shoulder to shoulder, essentially, around, through, and about the farm for 4 days. Then they moved outside the farm and walked the surrounding properties for 3 additional days. They put divers in the family pond that was on the property, and then they put divers in the fish creek into the deeper pools. Yeah, I heard your Huck. They had drones and helicopters that searched the sky, and they brought in multiple canine teams that they searched every inch of the property. Now, the New York conservation wardens were spread thin because 9 days earlier, a man named Tom Messick disappeared. That should ring a bell to people that follow me. Tom was one of the cases that we highlighted in Missing 411 The Hunted. Tom disappeared on a hunting trip with his family and best friends. So they were working 2 disappearances at the same time. The Saratoga Sheriff made a statement that the disappearance of Fritz Drum was suspicious. But you know what? Law enforcement always makes these statements that cases are suspicious when they can't get closure to them right away, finding a body, let's say. Well, Ruth Drum put up a $20,000 reward, and through pressure by the community, the Saratoga County Sheriff continued searching for 2 more weeks, just working that area to the bone, making sure that nobody could be missed. Hey, I heard you. They all heard you too. Yeah? Are you lonely? Come on. Come on. Come on. Yeah. So, Ruth Drum and Fritz had been married for over 40 years. They loved each other immensely. It was rare when they were separated. So when something like this happens, when separation occurs, very odd. Knowing that his vehicle didn't leave, I'm going to let Huck out. You want to go outside? Okay, I'll let you go. Say you're sorry to the viewers. Okay, now we got peace and quiet. Knowing that this happened while Ruth was gone was odd, to say the least. So a year later, the sheriff came back, searched again. Several days, found nothing. Brought cadaver dogs, found nothing. It's now been almost 8 years. Nothing of Fritz's has ever been found. Great personality, easygoing guy, helped everyone, loved by everyone. What happened? Now, I knew this story really well because we talked about it briefly in Missing 411 The Hunted. But then, November of last year, I heard about this story, and I put it on the bookcase, and I said, I'm gonna bring this story to the readers. To the viewers. And you're gonna see why. Bruce Benson, 69 years old, went missing November 9th, 2022 at 8 p.m. He lived 1 mile away from the large Red River, lived very close to the Texas border, lived in a city called Ranlette, Oklahoma, with a large creek that ran through the property. So here is the Texas-Oklahoma border, which is the Red River. This is the Benson farm. This is Ranlette. All types of small bodies of water. You can probably see all the little tiny blue dots, water everywhere, close to the Red River. Creek runs through the property. So you understand where he lived. He was a farmer, and his son worked with Bruce and his wife on the family farm. Son's name was Grady. And on November 9th, Grady was fixing a flat on a plow in the field. And Bruce knew his son was out there working, so he went into the house, made some dinner, and brought it out to Grady in the field. This is Bruce. Easy going. Nice guy. Everyone liked him. Very helpful. Well, as he was talking to Grady, he told him that he wasn't feeling well, which was very odd because Bruce always felt good. And he told Grady that he was feeling so bad that he may not come out to work tomorrow, so don't worry. I got to tell you, when I heard this, it reminded me of so many times on cases I've heard of people in the woods. One person reports not feeling well, and it causes this point of separation. One goes one way, one goes the other. Here, it's in the middle of a farm, in the middle of nowhere. Point of separation. Bruce says he feels so bad, he may not be coming back tomorrow. Okay. So that was on November 9th. Well, Bruce's wife, Grady's mom, name was Maxine. She was on a trip with a bunch of girlfriends. And Bruce and Maxine had been married for 50 years. They were super tight, loved each other immensely. Bruce, Maxine, and Grady were like the three musketeers. Well, Maxine tried reaching Bruce by phone on the 10th. There was no response. On the 11th, she tried calling him in the morning. Didn't answer the phone. Well, Grady, remember, knew his dad wasn't feeling well, so didn't think anything of him not showing up on the 10th. But on the morning of the 11th, Maxine calls Grady and says, "Hey, can you go check on your dad? He's not answering his phone." And Grady said, "Yeah, he wasn't feeling well the other day, so I'll go to the house when I get into the property." So Grady, first thing in the morning, like 5:30, 6 a.m., goes to the house. And he sees Bruce's new boots that he bought in the last week sitting next to his favorite chair with socks laying over the top of the boots. He searched the whole home. Truck was in the normal place it's always parked in front of the house. He didn't think much of it at the time. Thought, well, maybe my dad's in the back somewhere or something, but he went back to work. Grady went back fixing, mowing, doing whatever farm needed to be done. At noon, his mom calls again and says, "Hey, did you find your dad?" And he said, "No." Truck was there, dad wasn't. Boots are next to the best chair. So he goes, I'm going back because I just don't feel right about it. And then the wife says, good. Noon, Grady goes back, searches the home from top to bottom, goes out to the truck, finds Bruce's keys to the truck and his wallet and the red coat he normally wore sitting all on the front seat, which wasn't abnormal. When you live in rural places, you don't worry about your keys bringing in, you don't worry about locking your door, you don't worry about your wallet being stolen. Nobody's going to come out on this rural farm. It's safe. So that night, Grady calls the mom, explains what he found, and they decided to call the sheriff. And Maxine decided to come home from her trip. At about the same time, Grady notified the sheriff that they want to report their dad missing. So Maxine got home within a day, and she explained to the sheriff that Bruce had a sweet tooth. And before she left, the night before, she baked Bruce a pie. And that night, she and Bruce sat down in front of the TV and each had a piece of pie before she left. When she got home, she noticed that there was no additional pie that had been eaten. And Maxine said, that is not normal. So she didn't think her husband ever got back in the home after seeing Grady. Otherwise, he definitely would have had a piece of pie. Now, to me, someone who likes pie, I understand that completely. That makes rational sense. So this was the Cotton County Sheriff's Office. And the sheriff brought in drones, airplanes, and canines. And the Bensons had a big farm. And they searched it from top to bottom. They didn't find anything. There was a 3-week formal search and more searches afterwards informally. There was a creek on the property that flowed to the Red River. That was searched. They walked in the bank. They went all the way to the Red River. They found nothing. This was about 10 miles outside of Ranlette, Oklahoma, off Highway 70. The family posted a $25,000 reward for their dad and their husband. The sheriff from Cotton County and his undersheriff told the press they'd never seen anything like this in a 30-year career. The press information officer for the sheriff's office went to school with Grady, knew him all these years. The sheriff knew the family, great family. No suspicion inside the family. They were dumbfounded. So they called the Oklahoma Bureau of Investigations. I know a little bit about this agency because my best friend, Harvey Pratt, worked for him for 40 years. Super professional. They came out, did an investigation, and described the disappearance as suspicious. Of course, as I've stated this before, when there's no evidence of where the person is, and they've exhausted all the places somebody can be, of course it's going to be suspicious. There was no evidence where Bruce went. Everything he ever had was at the house. But there was no evidence of a crime. Now, to me, what really perked up my thoughts on this case, and it wouldn't to anybody else, was Grady finding his dad's boots with the socks laid over the top of the boots next to his favorite chair. Lack of shoes, lack of socks. I find that really weird. Now, let's talk about both cases for a second. Fritz Drum, 68. Bruce Benson, 69. Fritz Drum, farmer. Bruce Benson, farmer. Bruce Benson, married 51 years. Fritz Drum, married 40 to 45 years. Residences, both rural farms. Bruce Benson, last seen by his son in the middle of the field. Fritz Drum, last seen by his wife as she goes to a family event. Point of separation in both cases. Both cases, water on the property. Lots of water in the immediate area. Lots of water. 0 leads in each case. Neither man ever found. In both instances, the wives were gone. Now, if you think about the Tom Messick case, who disappeared 9 days before Fritz Drum disappeared. Tom Messick was 82 years old. He went missing November 15th, 2015. All 3 cases happened in November. The span being November 9th to November 24th. Different years, all in November. Only one of the instances, and that would have been Tom Messick, the men were actually hunting. In all instances, the men were all older men. In all instances, people said they would never walk away from their loved ones. In all 3 instances, nothing related to them was ever found. They all completely disappeared. How can you think that any of this is even somewhat normal? The relationship of the facts between Fritz Drum and Bruce Benson, you just can't ignore them. Now, can I claim that I know what happened to these people? No, I can't. Do I think that they voluntarily walked away from their lives? No way. Some of you who have lived in cities and have moved to different parts of the world, and every 4, 5, 6 years, averages every 7 years people move. But a farmer, there's an attachment a farmer has, a rancher has to the land, to their land. It's an emotional attachment. The thought that they would choose to leave and never come back, don't believe it. I don't believe it. So I bring you these cases. Fits the 411 profile. Both men, all 3 men, were alone and no eyes were on them when they disappeared. How odd is that? Yet, in the time prior to their disappearance, all 3 men were around family members. So you can watch the segment on Tom Messick, and it's a long one. There's a little bit about Fritz Drum and Missing 411 the Hunted, but I can tell you all of them are related in my mind. So please share this video on your social media and watch Missing 411 the Hunted. You can watch it on Amazon right now. And I'm humbled that you're here. I really do think that the articles and letters I read today were deeply important. When you go out tonight, tomorrow, do something kind for a neighbor, a friend, someone in need. It'll do your heart good, and it does us good as a society. Until we meet again, Paulides out.